mapipigil sa pagpabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng kwela. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, dunong at tulog. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting nagigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, katipunan.
Kapag 90, kaya nating tapusin.
Radyo Katipunan is now online. See our live feed on facebook.com/radyokatipunan. Check out our Instagram and our Twitter at Radyo Katipunan and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Radyo Katipunan FM for more exclusive content.
To listen to music that uplifts the soul, follow jescom.ph on Spotify and Jescom Music on YouTube. Our music is also available on iTunes and Deezer.
Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
If it's entertainment you crave,
Catch us on New Wave.
surfing through the latest on our shores.
Every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m.
See you there.
Follow at Radyo Katipunan in our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. All cap! Inspirational music. Tune in. Ministries. The Jesuit Hour. Anything Jesuit, everything Jesuit. The Jesuit Hour.
Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, radyo, katipunan. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, tunong at tulong. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting at tigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, radyo, katipunan.
Let us understand mental health and explore how we can take care of our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Welcome to your weekly slice of mental health tips and tidbits with Pat and B. here on MindEd.
Sa'yo sumisilong kapag ang puso ko'y pagod.
Hello, okay. Welcome to MindEd, your weekly slice of mental health tips and tidbits. My name is Pat.
And this is B. I am just a letter. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening. Sorry, tinatry ko kasi i-cross-post or i-share yung live natin sa page ko. Pero ba't di gumagana? Ewan.
Copy-paste the link.
So, I'll just copy-paste the link probably. Pero usually kasi nasi-share ko siya as ano eh. As a live video. I don't know. Baka privacy and stuff. But well, hello, B. Kumusta? How are you?
Are you with me now?
I am half or partially. Yeah.
Na-distract ka.
Oo eh. Pero sige lang, go. How are you? How's this past week been?
Crazy.
Tell me,
Crazy
explain
good.
what this means. Okay, crazy good.
It's crazy good. It's crazy good.
Okay.
Been working with myself talaga. Well, most of the things kasi that I do rin, kumbaga parang brainstorming with myself, parang marami akong ganong projects ngayon for some reason. And these projects are kumbaga outside of what I'm usually doing. So these are special projects. All will roll out or I guess stream or air next month for an August.
Okay.
So, hindi ko pa masabi yung kasi hindi pa ata lumalabas yung official teasers.
Sige.
But yeah, they're all within our campus naman. So, kaya hindi ko masabi, ayoko ma-preempt eh. Baka pagalitan ako. But really exciting projects. I mean, it's great because like a lot of the work that I do are very mechanical. And these two projects are really more into the creative side naman.
Okay.
So, yeah. Definitely, yeah. I was actually, you remember our episode, you being in the zone.
Yes.
Kasi yung episode dati na yun, I forget ko ano pa yung ibang mga stuff that we talked about. But yeah, Sunday was my in the zone day.
Okay.
I was writing for 12 hours.
Wow.
Not naman straight. I mean, I do get to, have breaks like lunch, dinner breaks, or every portion or every segment, I stand up and stretch, water break or whatever, ganyan. But yeah, so like I was in the zone for mga 10-ish. Actually, hindi. 10 a.m. to 11 conditioning. Ang tagal. Isang oras. AKA procrastination.
Yeah.
Yep. And then 11, yun na talaga. Tapos dire-diretso na siya hanggang 11-ish ng gabi. So yeah. It felt amazing.
How different does this work feel to you compared to the work that you used to be doing?
Well, yun nga eh. Again, this one is more on the creative side. Mas creative writing siya than technical writing or than mechanical tasks. So a different side of the brain, I guess. And then for this one, para ko ba sasabihin siya na hindi ako masyadong mag-reveal. Let's just say that it involved a lot of reading. Para ako nag-thesis ulit. And then it's very insightful, I'd say. I guess kaya rin ako nasa zone because it's something new. And yeah. So it's like I had to digest pala. I had to digest a lot of information and insights and sort of spin it in a creative way so that it become my output. That's so vague, but yeah. Basically, it's creative writing.
Yeah. No, I'm glad because like to be able to see you in this mood or in this mode really it's very inspiring. Because I mean like compared to how things would be before or how basta Basta yun.
Parang sino ba yung may
It's
hugot? Ako o
different.
ikaw?
Ako yata.
You're a true friend, Patrick.
For you, for you naman.
Yeah.
No, so I'm glad. It's good stuff to be, or it's good to kind of be able to journey with you through, you know, the ups and downs of your previous work, and to see you in this upswing now.
Yeah, well, we have more time for
Yeah.
things like this, whatever. Yan. Hindi ko pa masabi. Pagka lumabas na lang yung poster, siya ako na lang i-reveal. But super
Sige.
exciting, yeah. I'm working with like brilliant minds, and I'm super, super, super excited for it. Anyway, enough of that. Baka yun yung maging topic natin. Patrick, how have you been?
Okay. I'll be honest, this week's kind of been a blur. No, I mean, not naman in a bad way. It's just that I've just kind of really hadn't had a chance to step back from the week just yet. And I know that, you know, I'm parang ironic, no? Kasi we were talking about examen last week, and how examen last week, and how part of it really is taking time out at the end of the day to take stock of what's happened. And then, but I feel like so far, di ko alam kung dahil today, this afternoon, there's just been a lot to do household-wise, or feeling ko it's mostly that. Because I feel like naman I've had time to reflect on a lot of stuff. But overall naman, like when I considering everything, it's actually been good. So si Chai and I think I mentioned this last week, but we've really made an effort, or to be more intentional about reading our couple's Bible together and doing the reflection, and it's made our, you know, our conversations, because we talk naman, of course. What kind of married couple doesn't talk? Pero meron mga ganon. But anyway, sorry. Okay, so we talk naman, but like it's made our conversations, or our connection a lot deeper. And so that's been, I think, one very grounding thing that we do every morning. But yeah, I mean, there's been so much to do. I think lots of things ramping up. Stuff I can't share just yet. Makikita nyo na lang, bigla na lang in a couple of weeks. Parang, something's different. Pero saka na yun. But yeah, so I think it's also been partially that's been contributing to the blurriness of things. But it's good we're having this episode today, because I think you and I both have had very, very meaningful experiences with spiritual direction and how grounding it can be. So, B, ba't ko ba nasabi yun? Ano pa pag-uusapin natin today?
Actually, it's like part 2. Or actually, ito yung main topic.
Core.
Yes, the core. Because last week, para nag-sharing lang tayo.
Oo nga eh.
Yep. And then this one, I think the episode that we'll have now is more guided, more structured.
By an actual expert, rather than just by us casually exploring. Yun talaga yun eh.
Oo nga eh. But yeah, we had fun naman last
of course
week. Yeah, we it was a very playful episode for the both of us. Anyway, feel ko kasi marami tayong pag-uusapan ngayon. So, our guest actually today is a returning guest of the show and of the station, because she's been in like several programs as well. Yung ating mga friends, ganyan. Ano yan? Why are you...
For the life of me, I can't remember when we had
Dude,
our guest. Was I there? Baka I
2019.
wasn't there. I wasn't around.
Maybe.
It's probable that I
No.
wasn't around.
Hanapin ko siya. I will
Sige
send
nga.
you a screenshot, and then we will challenge your
Sige, my memory.
dito?
No?
Your memory. Nakakatawa ka. So, sorry. Sandali. Talagang na-bother ako eh. Wait, just give me a minute.
Wala
anyway,
ako
so,
nun. I promise.
are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. I would remember.
Okay, wait. Later na lang yan.
Mamaya na yan. Sige.
But yeah, let's settle that. So yeah, returning guest siya, and no Patrick. Nakita ko lang yung thumbnail eh. You were there. Yes.
Anyway, okay.
Anyway,
My bad.
sorry, ang dami commercial. Okay, so anyway, she is the vocation and pre-novitiate directress of the Cenacle of the Religious Sisters. Please welcome back Sister Cecile Tuble of the Religious of the Cenacle. Hello po, sister. Welcome back to MindEd.
Hi, Sister
Hi.
Cecile.
Hi. Hi, B. Hi, Patrick. It's so nice to be back here.
I'm really
It's an
bad.
honor.
I don't know how I've forgotten that we've had you on the show. My goodness. But I mean, yes, welcome back. So if you can lang, can you share with us how your week has been?
My week. It was a very busy week with ministry, and most of my ministry are now online. So I've had several spiritual direction sessions and one online on-site retreatant. So the week has been kind of full and busy for me.
Wow.
So that was my week.
Thank you. It must feel very, very strange. Or I guess it kind of struck me lang as interesting that the work that you guys do now is a mix really of online stuff. And you mentioned that you have one on-site retreatant.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've slowly resumed operations in our retreat house, but it's on a limited capacity to follow safe distancing. So we only accept up to 10 retreatants. And so most of our retreatants are online. Our spiritual direction sessions are online. So it was quite a shift for us also. We had to get used to the technology, and it's a very different experience to do online ministry.
Yeah. Okay. Now I remember now we did have a session. We did have an episode, pero live. Kaya ako parang ang naalala ko na lang talaga is yung mga episodes natin na over Zoom. Because,
over Zoom.
Like for the life of me, parang that the time when we were doing episodes live in the studio was like a lifetime ago now at this point. So
yeah.
But I remember now. Thank you, B, for refreshing me.
May resibo. Buti na lang may thumbnails.
Salamat. Okay, B, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, this sir, I wanted to ask kasi ko, like, how was it different? Like, kamusta po yung shift? Ano po yung napapansin niyo dun sa mga like retreatants now, and how you were able to run like programs before, the main, I guess, challenges, and how you were able to deal with them or cope?
Well, it was really an ongoing discernment for us as the pandemic developed and worsened. No, we needed to listen to the needs of the time. So there were many requests for online, for example, for online formation courses for postulants of different congregations. So we started that. And then because of the need of people for spiritual direction and sometimes counseling, we had to also shift our ministry to online. So we had to learn Zoom, we had to learn a lot of things. And then parang nag-snowball na siya. Maraming requests to give group programs and group retreats via Zoom. So we went into that also, but it was an ongoing, and it still is an ongoing discernment. Now, what are the needs of the people of our time? So we needed to constantly listen. So that's how we are functioning now.
Galing. Grabe yung boses si Sister Cecile. Parang feeling ko retreat mode tayo. Kalmado tayo. And so yun, sister, I mean, going into the topic siguro. Can we sort of, I mean, we've talked about spiritual direction, not only in this program, in several programs as well. But can you probably refresh our memories and of course those in the comment section or those in your homes watching our episode, like ano po ba ang, like what is spiritual direction? Why do people go sa mga retreats for spiritual direction?
Well, first of all, we need to clarify the misconception about spiritual direction. Because of the word direction or director, people think that it's like you have someone superior who directs or tells the other person what to do and how to live her interior or his interior life. So that's a misconception. Spiritual direction is a one-on-one process which aims to establish and to maintain a growth orientation in one's faith life. So yun yung final object ng process, kaya tinatawag na spiritual direction kasi you help the person to orient or to direct one's life towards growth in the faith life. So that's what spiritual direction is, and there are two basic components, two movements that are constantly in a dynamic relationship. One is ongoing listening, articulating, and awareness of God's presence and action in one's life. And the second is a growing response to God's calls. So may awareness, tapos may response. So yun yung two components ng spiritual direction.
It's such a, it's like it's like communication. Sorry, communication major. So it's like receiving and giving. Parang yun yung napulot ko din. And yes, I've been having retreats na rin, of course, with the Cecile and with the Jesuits. Spiritual direction, talaga, it's really not dictated, I guess. Or hindi siya ganun. It's not like that. It's more
Hindi siya directive.
Hindi, oo. It's more maybe just guiding. And it's really up to you how you will journey. And the pacing, no, system.
And it's really, the goal is really the spiritual project, the spiritual progress of the person. So it's not the director's agenda not to impose on the person. Instead, the spiritual director acts as a mirror to clarify, help the person clarify where God is calling him or her at this particular point in his or her life.
Okay. Yeah. And then, sister, is it the same as counseling?
There are some very important differences between spiritual direction and counseling. The most important difference has to do with the goals. No, in terms of spiritual direction, the goal is really a deepening of one's relationship with God. And as a result of that, it's like the person lives a discerning presence, a grace-filled presence in the world, and a discerned response in terms of building the kingdom of God. So yun yung output, kumbaga, na I become more discerning and I become a disciple of Jesus in the world. Whereas in terms of counseling, the goal there is insight and healing for a better adjustment in life. Okay, so there's that nuance. The focus is on, in spiritual direction, the focus is on one's prayer life, on one's life of faith, hope, and love. And the material may be one's prayer, one's spiritual experiences, and the questions and crisis in faith. So these are the material. In terms of counseling, the material would be intrapsychic concerns or issues or harmful behavior or attitudes that need to be corrected so that the person can adapt more in a better way, cope more in life. Okay, so that's the basic difference. But they are similar in the sense that the director and the counselor both provide an atmosphere of unconditional acceptance to the person. So that's very important. So I think that's where they also converge.
I have a question. So, see, there are several, I guess, in thoughts that are floating on in around in my mind. One is, while the perspectives are unique, they both, like between spiritual direction and counseling, there are overlaps in a sense. Now, for example, a person undergo, or a spiritual director, in terms of how they will um attack, so to speak, the issue of depression, perhaps. The perspective is different but still overlaps with how for example, a cognitive behavioral therapist will look at depression. But it's not necessarily uniquely that spiritual direction will only look at the person's spiritual life or spiritual relationship and attribute the depression to a gap in that. Hindi naman siya ganun, diba?
Yeah, I think in reality, you cannot really say to the person, okay, ano lang tayo, SD lang tayo ha, walang counseling matter. Kasi the guiding principle here, which is very Ignatian, is to meet the person where the person is. So oftentimes they say the request comes to us for spiritual direction, but in the course of the conversation, the person is in need of counseling. So which is why for Senecal sisters, it's important that we have counseling, basic counseling background, so that so we can accompany the person wherever the person is right now. Then maybe, hopefully, as the sessions progress, then you can move into the person's relationship with God, faith life. Pero yung kadalasan mag-uumpisa muna sa counseling, no, kasi yun ang kailangan nila, counseling. Lalo na kung may underlying mental health issue, no, so that needs to be addressed also.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, sister, actually you mentioned na rin kanina na parang it's the Ignatian like formation or background. That's why I think we're having this one as part of our Ignatian month special to talk about it. Like how yes, we've talked about like the spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius, but in general po, like in Ignatian spirituality, how is it being adopted or practiced in the spiritual direction po ninyo? And pagkagayan ba, sister, pare-parehas ba siya with like how other retreat houses or other SDs give it po? Or there's a very distinct element or factor kapag sinabi mong okay, ang formation nito is Ignatian, ganyan po?
Well, it's in terms of the spirituality, we share Ignatian spirituality with other congregations, no. But in terms of the Senecal has been very much that's one of the themes, no, which is Ignatian spirituality. In terms of the work, in terms of the context of spiritual direction, and Ignatian spirituality lends itself very well in the context of spiritual direction. Kasi, diba, Ignatian spirituality is all about finding God in all things. And this is really the goal that you would want to need to facilitate in the person. The person will discover and deepen one's relationship with God. Talagang finding God in all things. That's very Ignatian. And perhaps one important point that the retreat or the spiritual director bears in mind is really spiritual freedom, which is, according to the spiritual exercises, the whole purpose of the exercises, and that's true spiritual freedom, which means that it grows out of an ordering of our values, so that when we come to a moment of decision or choice, we are not swayed by disordered loves. No, so there's an ordering in our life, and that's the goal of spiritual direction. So it's very Ignatian in that sense. Okay, so ganun din sa retreat na nangyayari. So how do I adapt the spiritual exercises in order to foster spiritual freedom for this person? So that's one important way that the exercises is adapted in the context of spiritual direction or retreats.
Yeah. Very curious now. So we've been using the word spiritual freedom or spirituality a lot. And I think it makes me curious about the differentiation. And I know this might be like a semantics thing, really, but the differentiation between spirituality and religiosity. Parang what's the key difference, at least based on the, I don't know if it's the technicality or whatever, but the difference between religious freedom versus spiritual freedom. I have another question about that later on, pero yun na muna.
Okay, so the way that I understand it is spiritual freedom is really what the spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius aim at, which is really an ordering. So in other words, that we have a lot of loves, a lot of desires in our life, and the goal here is to order them so much so that we stand in a balance and disposed and ready to respond to God's invitations in our life. Yun yung goal, so that we are free to respond. So spiritual freedom is not license. Now, I want to do what I want to do and I want to do it now. That's not true spiritual freedom. In terms of spirituality and religiosity, spirituality, I think, is a broader term. When we speak about religiosity, it connotes the practices that we have in terms of our particular faith tradition. So yun yung religiosity. Spirituality has to do with one's relationship with the divine. No? So that's how I understand the question, Patrick.
Thank you.
Does that clarify?
Absolutely. Which I guess gives way to my next question. So parang spirituality or spiritual freedom has wait lang, my baby is kind of going not crazy, but she's like trying to push off buttons. But anyway, parang have you ever had a spiritual directee who was not Catholic or who didn't necessarily subscribe to the same I guess spiritual practices, or parang the attribution to the divine is different from your definition of what or what your belief or understanding of what the divine or who the divine is?
Well, personally, I've never had any experience of a directee who is non-Catholic. Although I've had experiences of directing a retreat to a group of teachers in Mindanao, and most of them were not Catholics. Some were Muslims, and some were of a different faith. So again, that whole principle of meeting people where they are. So it's not it's a stance of reverence for their faith and an openness to dialogue. So in terms of spiritual direction, I think the important criteria here is the person willing to open herself or himself to the direction process, in spite of the fact that the director happens to be Catholic. No? So yun yung criteria noon.
That's interesting. Was that a long retreat? Was that, and was how was that particularly difficult also for you to do as a
Well,
Catholic?
syempre yung the prayers that I conducted had to be more generic, no, addressed to
Yeah.
God and not Trinitarian. And then,
Yeah.
but it was a very beautiful experience because they were also open. So I just led them into a reflection of God's presence in their lives. So they did
That's amazing.
a reflective exercise. And I remember one of the Muslim teachers said that her purpose in life is to be a faithful daughter of Allah. So that's what she said.
Yeah.
So it's it's a very delicate dance,
Yeah.
no? Holding one's faith at the same time being open to dialogue with other faiths.
Yeah. Si
That
Bian
was,
meron siyang,
oo nga. Actually, nag-enjoy ako ngayon makinig because it's beautiful to hear that spirituality is all it's not exclusive. It's very inclusive, and actually the term that I'm thinking about now is like it's like embracing us, and it's somehow parang makes us all relatable. And oh yeah, it makes spirituality more relatable rather,
Yeah.
to different types of people. And then yun, yeah, it's really also to know that you don't have to be religious for you to be able to tap into your spirituality, and
Yeah.
guided by our sisters, yun nga, to be able to meet you where you are. I'm gonna tweet that later. I love that phrase. Biglang mental note. And
Yeah.
meet you where you are. And also like saan ka ba tinatawag? Parang it's more like that eh. Parang
Yeah.
really looking into yourself, and it's guided na in a way hindi ka takot kasi like I know a lot of, not naman a lot, like siguro a number of people who are very hesitant to go
Yeah.
into spiritual direction or even retreat. Yung ganyan, na parang
Yeah.
paano ba gagawin? Paano ba mag-uumpisa yan? Mag-share na ba ako? Tatanungin ba ako? How do I prepare for it? Siguro, paano nga ba, sister, kapag ka ganon, di ba? How do you encourage yourself? Or ano ba, may preparation po ba na kailangan gawin before you go into a spiritual direction?
Well, you see, one misconception that hinders people from going to spiritual direction is the thought that ayoko makinig sa Diyos kasi baka may pagawa siya sa akin na hindi ko gusto.
Right.
No? That God might I have to do something, and that's not really at the heart of our relationship with God. So we as the spiritual director needs to clarify also what the person's image of God is, no, that thinks in such a way that God is like imposing his will on others. So it's very important to do some evangelization, no, that God is a God who constantly invites us to fullness of life. So this means that at the very heart of our being, our heart's deepest desires is one and the same with God's deepest desires for us. So walang conflict dun sa pinakamalalim na level ng ating desiring. It's one and the same with God's desires for us, and which is fullness of life. So who wouldn't want fullness of life, diba? So, but people think that they have to give up all sorts of things in order to follow God. So there's a need to clarify that there's just simply an ordering of one's loves in one's life. Okay? And you don't need any preparation. You just need to be willing and open to listen to and to share of yourself, and then the director will help you articulate your experience.
Kasi I think that is beautiful kasi it's very ano po ba, ako pa nahirapan ako personally to encourage people to go into spiritual direction, especially when you know, or you naman nga you know, but you feel that the person needs it. Because ako mismo, like you yourself or I myself, know like the experience and how it has helped me, and so I wanted to share that experience with others as well. So yeah, I think this will I mean hopefully this will encourage people not to be intimidated by by this. Sige, sister, isi-segue ko lang. Ito kasi si James, hindi na lang sinabi sa group chat. Then, ang tanong po niya is, based kasi sa mga sharing niyo, is that nagbabago po ba ang plano ng Diyos sa atin? Like when you say na parang, okay, I am like discovering what, like the true calling that I have in my heart, is it something na nagbabago? Tama ba,
It's a
James?
very, very interesting question.
Yeah, it's a common question that yung in terms of the will of God. So first of all, yung will ng Diyos hindi siya set in concrete, no, na ikaw kailangan magpari ka. Ganyan. It's a dialogue. So vocation is which is comes from the Latin word vocare, which means to call. Is simply that God calls us constantly towards fullness of life, and then we respond. We respond with all our lights and shadows, with all our talents and limitations and all of that, with all our gifts. No, so it's a constant dialogue. No, but the way that God constantly draws us to what is more life-giving. No? So halimbawa, option A, B, C. So sabi ni God, sana piliin ni B yung option A kasi ito yung pinaka-life-giving. No? But wherever you choose, God will still be there. But let's say you chose B, option B. And then God said, okay, she chose option B. So I'll set before her C, D, E, no? And or more options, and hopefully she chooses the option that is the most life-giving. So it's a constant dialogue between our responding and God's invitations. So this presupposes really a constant listening. Ignatian Spirituality teaches us that it makes us, the exercises makes us ready to respond to the ever-recurring calls of God. So we are in a balance so that we can be ready to respond at any moment that God prompts us. No? So that's how it is in terms of our listening to God's will.
Galing. Okay, James, sana nasagot yung tanong mo. So what I picked up from that, sister, is that it's not really the plans of God, but it's really more your plans together. Parang ultimately, it's of course your decision, it's the free will nga kung yung sinasabi natin, di ba, pinaniniwalaan natin. But you know, God is a God of possibilities, na hindi talaga siya nauubusan ng option. And it's just really a challenge maybe for us to be able to listen and not just, you know, parang not just, I guess dito rin, sister, pumapasok yung discernment, no? Na you really pray about the decision and the listening, that you are able to listen to the voice of God within you. So thank you, sister. Ayan, thank you din daw po, sabi ni James. So yun. Okay. So sister, kanina po, I wanted to, I took a mental note of it kasi sinabi niya na it's also like difficult and more challenging, especially if a person has mental health issues or mental health cases. And yan. So how do you parang can probably share us like some experiences or maybe some guidance din po? Like number one po siguro is when a person comes to you, usually po ba, like, do you interview him or her about like the mental health case that she has, ganyan, or do you, kumbaga parang, saan mo siya pumapasok? Hindi ko ba compose yung sentence ko? Pero it's more like, I try to be really, really careful about it. Pero yun nga po, parang, how do you handle such cases? See, this is why I'm not an expert. This is why you're here.
Yeah, I understand your question, B. As a Senecal, come as you are. So sometimes they come and in the course of our conversation, we discover that the person has mental health issues, and so we adapt as best as we can. If the person is, for example, depressed, and the person in the judgment of the spiritual director is in need of uh, of more interventions, then we do the ministry of referral. So we, as gently as possible, refer the person to a mental health professional. So that's part of the ministry of spiritual direction, knowing when to refer a person. But let's say the person has already known that she or he has mental health issues and comes for spiritual direction. No, so a good deal of that is really clarifying how the illness can affect one's relationship with God. Kasi, halimbawa, depression, merong mga cognitive distortions. Like, I am not good enough, I am hopeless, and I'm the worst person in the world, and all sorts of cognitive distortions, which in turn affect their relationship with God. So these cognitive distortions are projected to God, and God is seen as, God loves the poor more than me, or God loves other people more than me. God does not love me. So yun yung cognitive distortions na kailangan ma-clarify in spiritual direction, so that the person comes to a truer image of God as founded in Scripture. That God is love, God is faithful, and will never ever abandon the person, no matter how bad the person feels. So that's how it is.
I have a question. So there are some people who come to counseling who think that who I think we discover in the work that a big component of the possible solution to what they come to counseling for is spiritual. But then there are that makes me curious if there are people who come to spiritual direction who don't realize that their concern or what brings them to spiritual direction is completely, and you were talking about referrals kasi. So I'm wondering, have you ever encountered a person who the root of their problem is really um psychological in nature, but had the tendency to over spiritualize, na parang sinasabi nila talaga na, no, my depression really comes from either from God, or because this is a punishment, and or that the only solution for me to really resolve my depression is through prayer, and to work through it through spiritual direction. Has that been something that is common, or at least have you experienced?
Yes, I have experienced that several times, that the person at the root of the problem is very much psychological, but the person spiritualizes it. And so in terms of that, the course of the spiritual direction has to address the spiritualization also, but at the same time to keep in mind that this person is in need of therapeutic intervention, so you make that referral pa rin as gently as possible. But you address the spiritualization to correct whatever it is that, and to help the person come to realize that perhaps I need other help. I need counseling. I need therapy.
How would you, in like the simplest way possible? So say for example, there is a person or a friend who is helping another friend out, except the friend who is experiencing the problem um tends to over spiritualize. Like what can a friend, sorry, walang pinanggagalingan to, this is like not a true to life situation, but I figure that this is something that a lot of people might experience, especially in our circles where we're all very religious and very spiritual, or have, very deep and meaningful spiritual relationships with God. So what can they say to their friends who are, who might be experiencing something deeply psychological but tends to over spiritualize?
Well, you can invite the person in a gentle, compassionate way to talk to someone. Like, would you like to talk to somebody who can perhaps listen to you and not judge you and can provide some help? And if they're more open to spiritual direction rather than counseling, kasi baka may stigma for them, then the spiritual direction can provide parang a transition into counseling. If they are able to experience someone who will be a holding environment, someone who to give that atmosphere of unconditional acceptance. So they might be open to the possibility of seeking help from counseling or therapy. So that could be a way to invite the person. Maybe you can you would like to talk to someone who can listen to you objectively. So you can ask that question.
So it's about the consideration of the many different options that the person has, of attacking or addressing the concern that they're bringing to their friends or that they're carrying with them. Nice. Thank you. Bian, parang nangangamba na. Okay ka lang?
Oo, hindi kasi para talaga tayo nagre-retreat eh.
Oo naman.
Parang gusto ko na lang makinig kasi we are talking about listening and ano tawag dito, discovering how to respond. Parang, sige wait, malalahimik muna ako, dinidiscover ko pa.
Okay.
So yeah, anyway, thank you for that. I'm also wondering, sister, what about counseling? Do you involve, like, there when you see that there is a need to, kasi alam ko po kunyari po sa we've interviewed like guidance counselors also in the show, and then they say na parang as much as possible they don't want to involve the family or the families, but if necessary, I think they have red flags or like trigger points that they do involve the family. How about, sister, in counseling or spiritual direction? Nangyayari po ba yung mga ganong cases?
Well, in counseling that happens, like there will be family counseling or family therapy, but in the context of spiritual direction, it's a one-on-one interpersonal process because it deals primarily with one's very personal and unique call from God, and one's very unique and personal response to that call. So more or less the context of spiritual direction is one-on-one. No? In cases of family, we always recommend that halimbawa yung mother ang ST si Sister A, yung father ang ST si Sister B. No? So magkaiba silang ST para rin makapag-share sila ng kung ano man yung kailangan nilang i-share. So it's not common to have group spiritual direction in the context of a family. You can give a retreat, a family retreat, but not a one-on-one
Like a family
spiritual.
intervention. Yeah.
Yes, you can
Yeah.
have a family retreat.
Yeah.
We have done family retreats.
That's good to hear. Gusto ko siyang like ikalat sa mga tao. Kasi
May mga kilala ka bang pamilya na
Oo.
kailangan ng
No,
family
I think
intervention?
lahat. I think lahat. Well, especially nga in the context of the pandemic, we've talked about cabin fever,
Right.
yung mga, for the families na too much togetherness, ganyan, like we hear stories about these things, kaya nag-aaway or what, ganyan. So parang this probably something that you can do as a family, like go to counseling or spiritual direction as a family, and then like discover your God together. Ganyan. Ngayon, sister, yung palabas naman po, like after like having sessions with them, your directees, ganyan po, ano po ba yung parang mahalagang dapat tabaon po nila or pinapabaon niyo po sa kanila going parang or stepping outside of that space of like the session, ganyan, kasi parang sa retreated, di ba po, pagka nandyan po kayo, you're present, you are isolated, you're in a sacred space with your SD, it's easy like for you to to concentrate and to focus on yourself, kasi talaga it's a choice na walang distraction. Pero di naman kasi pwedeng everyday ganun na lang. I mean, how do we bring it outside, like when you're working already, when you are in school for the students, or when you're kumbaga outside of kumbaga sa totoong buhay na in the real world, how do you bring it with you?
Mm-hmm. Well, a good deal of the spiritual direction has to do with really helping the person find God in all things, to equip the person with ways and means to get in touch with God. So particularly through the examen. So the examen is how you can check in with God. And we encourage journal writing so that you have a record of your ongoing relationship with God. Now, a journal doesn't have to be a long novella. No, it can be just a very short log entry. No, but it's a way to develop a practice, a spiritual practice of taking note of the movements in one's life, in one's day. No? So we emphasize that God is always with the person, that God is ever faithful. So it's a matter really of seeking that presence, of discovering where that presence in every moment of one's life. So, and also to emphasize that spiritual direction is not a one-time consultation experience. So it's an ongoing relationship. So you check in with your SD, with your spiritual director at regular times of your life, especially if you are dealing with some personal issues that has to do with your relationship with God.
Thank you, sister. Ang gandang pabaon. Wait, higa muna tayo.
Favorite line yata ni B from today is God in all things and meeting the person where they're at. True or false?
True. Kasi I remember, one of yung pinaka-favorite ko, I think, na sinabi na ni Sister Cecile in like, one of the retreats, pre-pandemic pa. Buti na lang, nag-retreat ako doon. Is that God meets us where we are. And God, especially, God meets us in our darkness. Yun yung talagang tumatak sa akin. Kung pwede ko siya ipatato, sister. Papatato ko siya. Pero it's here, right? It's inside. God meets us in our darkness. And, when we experience our own darkness out in the world or doing like, even the everyday, kapag, we have down moments. Thank you, sister, for reminding us that, it's an invitation for us to see God in all things. Just very Ignatian and very ano rin, very cynical na rin. Grabe na, miss ko na yung retreat house, guys. Punta na lang ako dyan. Dyan na muna ako titira. Magka-quarantine muna ako dyan. So, ayun. Anyway, Patrick, do you have any more questions before we invite Sister Baby to, nasa pabaon na rin naman tayo to say for some parting words?
Not a question, but I think my favorite or my key takeaway here talaga that spirituality is a universal thing. It's a universal experience. It's not just something that Catholics have as an exclusive right over, or Muslims, or anybody really. And in that sense, in the weirdest sense, that's what true Catholicism is, right? It's universal. And I like how parang it's such an interesting experience to be able to give a spiritual retreat to people of different faiths and different religions, because that in itself also is very Catholic. And I just find that really, really, really amazing. So thank you for sharing that, Sister Cecile, with us. That's amazing.
Yay! Para talaga tayo nasa retreat mode, no? Ayun. Sige, sister, thank you again so much.
Is there any way that other people or people can participate in spiritual direction or in the retreats with Cecile or with you, Sister
How can they
Cecile?
reach you?
Yeah, well, they can always visit our website, www.sanacalphilsing.org, or visit our Facebook at Sanacal Retreat House. That's our Facebook name. And we have a coming soon program in August. It's the Fine Art of Adulting. So it's for young people, the Fine Art of Adulting. It's over 4 Saturday mornings. So if you're interested, just log in. And siguro yung last word for me is that if you've ever asked yourself, what is this all there is to life? Who is God and who am I? Then you're ready for spiritual direction. So you look for SD. You can come to the Cenacle and we will journey together. So thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you, Sister Cecile. It's always refreshing to have you with us and on the show. And I think B and I are not just happy hosts, but we're happy directees of yours also. So thank you for your presence and your existence in our lives. Thank you. B, anything? Any announcements?
Announcements, I don't know, just log in na lang siguro sa Facebook page natin. I'm sure there are a lot of announcements here. Just want to say a quick hello to those in the comment section. Erwin Villamor, hello. Darken Lupit, hello po. Kirk, our friend, good evening.
Forever.
Rafael Caballero. And then Alina Pantalans. Good evening to sa inyo. And Patrick, thank you for being here.
Yes.
For journeying as well.
Also.
And this is we're all journeying together. And again, Sister Cecile, thank you so much po. Patrick, any announcements naman from you?
That's it. Nothing from me. Everybody, happy Ignatian month. The feast day of Saint Ignatius de Loyola is on the 31st. Yes. So hopefully everybody has a meaningful commemoration of his feast day. We will see you guys, I think, next week.
Yes.
Maybe, probably. This has been MindEd, your weekly slice of mental health tips and tidbits. Thank you, Sister Cecile, for being with us. My name is Pat.
My name is P. I am just a letter. We'll see you maybe next week.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Let us understand mental health and explore how we can take care of our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Welcome to your weekly slice of mental health tips and tidbits with Pat and B. Here on MindEd.
Sa'yo